Hi, my name is Kaitlyn Rentala, and I'm a rising senior at the University of Pennsylvania studying philosophy, politics, economics with a globalization concentration. I'm currently working on an honors thesis as a part of my larger PBE degree, which looks at the role of large private technology companies in liberal democracies from a philosophical perspective. Specifically, I've spent my time researching and analyzing how institutions of technology today have started to usurp government as the primary actor of the basic structure of society. I'll break down all those terms for you in the next few minutes. First, looking at how private tech companies influence democratic society today, and then giving a bit of background on the term basic structure and how that fits in with my research. So, first, looking at technology. While most of early technological innovations were confined to the private sphere, recently the impact of technology has increasingly affected the public sphere as well. I focus on two primary examples that showcase this outsized influence of technology on liberal democracy today. First, being surveillance capitalism, which is the market driven process centering around the commodification of personal data. This term was defined by Professor Shoshana Zuboff of Harvard Business School, and she argues that private corporations, since they own much of our private data today, this imbalance of power with private corporations owning individual data ultimately distorts information systems and weakens democratic institutions. Since our personal information is controlled by unelected surveillance capitalists, this ultimately poses major issues for our governance system. Secondly, I looked at social media platforms and free speech issues. So increasingly, speech occurs on private social media platforms, which are not subject to First Amendment concerns since they are considered private. As a result, content moderation falls to private corporation compliance teams, which raises large questions about the role private corporations play in monitoring and regulating speech, which is instrumental to the functioning of democratic society. These questions are really large and immense and tie in ultimately with the larger question of what is considered just democracy and how should we regulate tech to ensure the fair functioning of liberal democracy. So looking at the basic structure and for a bit of background on the basic structure, the basic structure was first defined by the political philosopher John Rawls as essentially the fundamental institutions that ensure a just democracy. These basic structure institutions, which Rawls primarily limits to governmental systems like the political constitution and the electoral process, are bound to the rules of democracy because they have a profound effect on the lives of all citizens. However, another one critique of Rawls's basic structures conception comes from the philosopher G.A. Cohen, who criticizes Rawls's view that the basic structure is restricted to institutions. Cohen argues that justice cannot exist just in formal institutions, but must also exist in practice in the day-to-day lives of individuals. Ultimately, this poses a really large question, which I'm ultimately really fascinated with, which is how should we regulate technology? Is it through the Rawlsian conception of justice or through the Cohen system of justice? And if we agree to one of those systems, how do we go about implementing that in day-to-day life or in the practicality? So some of my next steps that I plan on building on this research from the summer is that I have now established that technology companies play an outsized role in the basic structure. I now plan on attempting to answer the more complicated question, which is which basic structure model, Rawls or Cohen, or maybe neither thinker, applies to the influence of private tech, and how should we ultimately approach technological regulation? It's a big question, but it's the question I plan on answering my senior year with an honors thesis. Ultimately, I would like to thank CURF and the Ruth Marcus Cantor Research Grant for allowing me to build a critical foundation of knowledge that I plan on utilizing in my forthcoming research. The lessons I learned from this research endeavor will be instrumental in both my senior honors thesis, but also as I pursue a JD PhD in political theory and ultimately a future career in academia.